Today I'm looking at the JoLuck A6 Cantabile classical guitar. This is a small scale classical guitar that's a 630mm scale length with a slightly smaller body and all solid wood construction, as well as a number of other features which I'll be getting into. I've been very interested in this instrument because it almost exactly matches the dimensions of the professional grade instrument that I usually play on, but of course at a different price point, affordability price point. So like I said, I also play a 630mm scale length guitar with a slightly smaller body. I'm quite short, so that I quite enjoy just having a guitar that's more at my proportions. Many people write into the site all the time asking about small scale guitars, and so I was really interested in this one, which we'll be checking out. So I think what I'll do in this video is first I'm just going to play you a little bit of music and a couple of just little things on the instrument so you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy hearing it. Then I'll show you some photos of the instrument so you don't get too much of the glare from my spotlights in here like that. So you can see the instrument up close, and then I'll have a discussion about all the features of the instrument and just a little bit more detail about all the things I like about it and any possible concerns that I might have as well. So for now though, sit back and relax and just enjoy a little bit of playing on the instrument. Here's the front of the guitar. European spruce, always looking very, very nice. Here's a closer view of the top and some of the nice inlays and fretwork, all very clean. Another view of the top, just a little closer in. You can see the nice rosette better in this one, and the matching bridge as well. The back of the guitar with the Indian rosewood. Another shot of the back of the guitar. Here's the headstock and the tuners. The tuners work quite well. I don't have much else to say about them, but they're nice and smooth and they do the job very nicely. Here's a close-up of the rosette, and you can see the label inside the guitar there, as well as the high C fret there. A close-up of the 12-hole bridge, really nice and clean. And here's a picture of the quite nice case. It is a soft case, but it's actually quite rigid in many ways. It also has like rubber on the bottom to stop any wear and tear. So really nice case as well. So this model of JoLuck is relatively a traditional model with a Hauser bracing style. But they also make models with lattice bracing. So this is a fairly traditional fan bracing style. And then they also make lattice brace guitars as well. So Sayers Guitar had a part in developing JoLuck guitars and to make small scale guitars with different options. So you can get, a more traditional sounding guitar such as this one. You can also get different styles of bracing such as lattice bracing. None of which matters, by the way. It all comes down to how an instrument sounds. I play on a traditional fan brace guitar. The luthier makes, or the company makes guitars in whatever bracing style, but they can always sound different. They can sound super focused or super open. It really just comes down to the design aspects of the builder. So as I said, this is a small scale guitar. When you talk about small scale guitars, you're just talking about a smaller scale length, and in this case, a slightly smaller body, which can be very comfortable if you're a little bit shorter, such as myself. And it can change the sound. It doesn't always change the sound. It really depends on the design of the luthier or builders. Although as a very generalized and not always true point, I would say that small scale guitars sometimes have a slightly more focused sound. They can still project very loudly and still have lots of response, but they tend to have a slightly tighter sound or slightly more focused sound, as opposed to like a big boomy Spanish guitar. And both qualities can be very excellent. I actually play on a small scale guitar and I really like that focused, balanced sound of it. 19th century guitars were much smaller even, and they project very well and they have a different sound. So it's just about listening to the instrument and seeing if you love it. Lots of people enjoy small scale guitars, whether they're a little bit shorter in stature. The size of the instrument tends to feel a little bit more comfortable. It brings the first fret a little bit closer to you. And if you have small hands, it can make reaches between frets just a little bit more comfortable. Not necessarily easier, but a little bit more comfortable. We're only talking about millimeters, between each fret. So it's not a fix-all. If you have troubles with stretches, you need to work on that in your technique. But a small scale guitar can make it a little bit more comfortable. So those are some of the reasons why, people tend to go for a smaller scale instrument. So let's talk about the specs of this guitar. I'll be talking about the sound and the playability in just a second, but let's just go through some of the specs. So like I said, a 630 millimeter scale length. That's from the nut to the bridge here. And a slightly smaller body. It's not as small as like a 7/8 size guitar, but it's just a little bit smaller than the full standard size, which I find particularly comfortable. I'm quite short and small, and it matches. It feels exactly like my Doug Scott guitar that I normally play in the videos. So I feel right at home. It feels just like my other instrument. So it's all solid wood. So we have a European spruce top, very pretty, of course. I'll talk about the sound of that in just a moment. We have on the back and the sides, we have Indian rosewood. It's the same type of wood that I have in the back of my instrument. It's very common in high-end classical guitars. Very easy to work with, has a nice, beautiful sound as well. The nut width, I think, is at 51 millimeters. The standard nut width is usually like 52. That's almost no difference though. And the thing I like about that is that it feels like a standard size classical guitar. So a lot of small scale guitars in factory settings are almost crossover guitars, and they make the neck quite different. But this feels like a normal, regular classical guitar neck. So I've been really interested in guitars that have that, because sometimes I'll find a small scale guitar and I'm so happy with it, I'm so excited about it, but then I feel the neck and it's like a crossover guitar, because factories are making it for the general public, which is generally electric guitar players who are playing classical guitar. So I really like that it's pretty much a standard classical guitar. It just feels exactly like the neck on my Doug Scott. So very comfortable, but I can do all of the classical repertoire properly on it because it has the correct spacing, and it also feels, normal in the right hand. We have a 12-hole bridge. I love the 12-hole bridge. It's way easier to tie, it's way cleaner. I think it even makes the guitar sound better. So I really think all modern guitars should have a 12-hole bridge. So congrats on that. It also has a high C. And a lot of factory guitars don't have a high C, and I think that's a mistake. High-end guitars almost always have it now, and the repertoire is starting to include it. So companies have to get on board and make that high C. It's really important to do so. This model has a truss rod in it, and in general, I support the use of truss rods. People have varying opinions about truss rods and how traditional it is or what it does to the sound, but I like it. It allows for a really stable neck curvature depending on where you live and the changing temperatures. That can really help. You can also make micro adjustments to the curvature of the neck. Really helpful. I found it very useful, especially on guitars at lower price points. It just ensures that you're going to have a good action on the neck. The neck's mahogany, fingerboard ebony, high gloss finish, great little gig bag for the guitar. So all of those are great things. So now let's talk about the playability and the sound of the instrument, all of which are very subjective topics depending on the player and the player's preferences, of course. So I'll say a whole bunch of generalizations, but at the end of the day, you make choices based on whether you love the instrument and love the sound and love the feel. Any kind of generalizations about the sound are we could talk about it for ages, right? So the playability is really great. Everything's set up really nice, so it's very easy to play, so I appreciate that. Just the action and setup of the instrument is really great, but that can always be adjusted to the preferences of the player. I find the responsiveness of the instrument, and what I mean by that is like how much pressure I have to place in the right hand to get sound pouring from the instrument. Is actually impressively very good on this. When I thought about a spruce guitars tend to have a slightly tighter sound and be not as light and responsive as cedars, but and also with the small scale length and the fan and the Hauser style bracing, I was wondering what the response was going to be like. But I'm actually very impressed that with very minimal effort, a lot of sound comes out of the instrument. So they must have worked out a bracing pattern that's working really well with the top wood, because it's very easy to produce sound on this guitar. I find it, really easy. Everything pops out quite nicely. With a spruce guitar, especially a brand new spruce guitar, I think it can still develop as the wood ages a little bit. I think it'll mellow out a little bit and open up even more. But the guitar is plenty open. So those two things of the action being set up nicely and there being pretty good response on this guitar mean that the playability is really high. And the ability to bring like, you know, notes out of the texture, super easy on the guitar as well. So playability, I think the playability is really great. I'm really happy with it at this price point. Now, what about the balance of the instrument? I think that this is my favorite thing about this particular guitar is the balance across the strings. And that's something that has to do with spruce guitars in general. I think the balance on spruce guitars tends to be a little bit tighter and more focused, so you don't get so much bleeding overtones, bleeding sustain coming out of the guitar that it ends up sounding muddy. In lots of spruce guitars, again, total generalization, not always true, but tend to be a little bit more focused, and you get lots of clarity between each string. Even when you play across the strings, you can hear each one super clearly and individually. This guitar does that for sure. It has really great clarity. I personally value balance quite a bit. I like the clarity. Although, you know, when you play, like, for example, again, as generalization, but like a cedar lattice double top or something, you have all the sound pouring out. It can be amazing to have all that sound pouring out, but it also can be very muddy sounding, and you don't get a lot of definition from each string. This guitar very much excels at that, definition from each string. It's not pouring out tons of warmth of sound like a big, huge cedar, you know, double top or something, but it is creating quite a bit of sound, and it's focused and it's defined. So I really appreciate that. And when I play like arpeggios, it doesn't tend to get muddy, and I can hear each individual string. So I really appreciate that more than anything from this guitar. Makes me want to play on a spruce guitar again. And I think the guitar will open up even more as it ages as well. In terms of the sound of the guitar, well, you're getting a lot of the sound that you would typically get from like a traditionally built spruce guitar, you know, really pure sound, really focused, and just really nice. Basses are really focused too, not muddy. You already heard the sound test. So at this price point, I think the guitar is delivering on playability and balance, and the sound of the instrument is quite pleasant as well. Do I have any concerns about the sound? Not really. I think sometimes when I'm playing it, it sounds a touch bit hollow, but really when I start playing repertoire on it, I don't hear that at all. I just hear a nice, pure, kind of clean sound. I think as the guitar ages and settles a little bit, it'll get rid of some of that and just be super pleasant all the time. But that sweetness, the sweetness of tone, like kind of a leathery sweetness or a bell-like tone, you could have a little bit more of that, but really at this price point, I think the guitar is doing fantastic. And I would be more than happy to recommend it to my students. If they're looking for a small scale guitar with a nice sound and a focused sound and definition, and they're wondering if the guitar is going to serve them well for as they advance through repertoire, then I would say that this is doing a really good job, and I would certainly recommend it. Do I have any concerns? Not really. The guitar is doing really, really well at this price point, so I don't have a lot of concerns. I would like to know, you know, I wonder how this guitar will sound in a year from now when it really settles, because spruce does take a while to settle. So I think that'll improve the sound of the instrument quite a bit. And although I like the tone of the guitar, it does have just like a touch of that kind of unsettled spruce sound. So I think that will correct itself naturally. But I'm still very happy with the sound of it. I like all the specs of the guitar. It doesn't have a raised fingerboard. That's okay. I don't need one. Like, I can play all repertoire without a raised fingerboard. And certainly I think with a lot of brands, when they try to add a raised fingerboard, the price just goes like up and up and up and up. And yet the value of the guitar and the sound of the guitar doesn't really go up with the price tag. Yes, you get this like raised fingerboard, but for a lot of extra money and it doesn't make your guitar hugely more playable. I really like raised fingerboards, but they're not necessary. And so I think particularly on this guitar, I think it's probably a good choice to not include it. Keeps the price tag a little bit lower. You still get a great sounding instrument, and it's also a very traditional instrument. Some people don't like raised fingerboards. So it's also nice to have the option to not have to have one. So besides that, I don't have any concerns. Everything's working really well for this instrument at this price point. I would also be super interested in trying one of JoLuck's small scale instruments in lattice bracing. I'd be very curious to see if the lattice brace versions have lots of responsiveness and projection, but the smaller body size and the smaller scale length focuses the sound just a little bit more. Sometimes with like the full-size guitars with lattice bracing, I'll find like they're producing so much sound that sometimes it can be a touch muddy. I wonder if like the small scale would tighten that up a little bit. Certainly this instrument with the spruce top and the Hauser bracing, it is very focused and clear and defined, which I quite enjoy. But as I said, I would also be interested in checking out the lattice brace to see how it compares in terms of those elements. So in conclusion, I think that the guitar is a good value. So I think at this price point, I think you're getting a lot of good things. You're getting that solid wood construction. You're getting a nice traditional sound, lots of definition between the strings. You also get that 12-hole bridge, the high C. So you're getting a lot of good things for your money. Any of the other concerns, that kind of comes down to the price point. When you start spending a lot of money, you can get rid of some of those concerns. But nevertheless, I think that a lot of people are going to really be interested in this instrument because small scale guitar with a lot of the great features and a proper classical guitar instrument makes this a very desirable choice at this price point. And there's not many comparable options on the market. It's getting better. There's more and more these days, but for small scale instruments like this, not as many, and certainly not at this price point. So definitely of interest, and I'll be recommending it to some of my students for sure.